Hey, I'm Carbo Brotherhood. This is an installation video for the Kel Tec SU-22 and Kel Tec PLR-22 Trigger Spring Kit. This trigger spring kit is compatible with both firearms. The installation is similar, but the disassembly assembly is different. For this installation, we will be doing it on an SU-22 by Kel Tec. You'll need 2 zip ties, a small punch, a pair of snips, 1 flathead screwdriver, 2 Phillips head screwdrivers, and a block of wood. Before we begin, let's check the stock factory trigger pull. £6, 12.5 ounces. Let's do another reading. £6, 12 ounces. First step, verify your weapon is clear. Check the chamber, check the bolt face, and the magazine well. Next, remove this pin right here. It'll break in half. This is the trigger assembly down here. This is what we're going to be going into. We want to remove this hinge right here. Take both screwdrivers. When one of the bolts come free, take your punch, press down on your table, turn, take your upper assembly, set that to the side. Release the hammer. Start removing all of these screws. This is the most time-consuming process, but isn't really that bad. All the screws are exactly the same, so you don't have to worry about remembering which one goes where. Once you've removed all the screws from both sides, go ahead and remove this little recoil pad at the back. Then start at the back and start prying slowly. Then take your flathead screwdriver and just work it in between gently. When you get to this point here, you have this much space between your buttstock. Over the trigger assembly, you want the hammer in the decock position. Slowly pry it apart. I have two halves like this. This trigger mechanism is very simple. It's your hammer and your hammer spring. Here's your trigger spring. All we're simply going to do is replace this stock trigger spring with the Carbo trigger spring. There's a side-by-side comparison of the two. This is the Carbo, this is the stock. Let's install the Carbo spring. Make sure the feet of the trigger spring are underneath this pin here. This back piece will rest underneath the safety. Once your SU-22 is completely disassembled, this is something that you should have. You should have two halves. You'll have a trigger with trigger spring, safety, hammer hinge pin, hammer spring, and a hammer. Go ahead and remove one of the halves, the left-sided half. We won't need that for now. What we want to focus on are these pieces here and the right side half. Go ahead and insert your safety in this hole here. This end down. Now, install the trigger into this hole, this pin into this hole, this back spring underneath the safety. Make sure the back spring rests on one of the grooves of the safety. Should look like this. Next, take your punch and use it to move the trigger so that you can put the hammer hinge pin in that front hole. Next, we will insert the hammer and the hammer spring, orient it like this, and then we will rotate the leg of the spring counterclockwise, like this. This is how we will have it resting. It'll be resting on this pin on the back side and on the front, as you'll see. So in doing so, we need to go ahead and rotate the back leg spring. Then take our punch and move the trigger out of the way so we can continue sliding the hammer on. We need to go a little bit further with that leg. Okay. Now we will insert a zip tie to hold everything together. Keep the head of the zip tie up here towards the back. So we placed one zip tie back here near the safety. You want to keep it as far back so that we can clear this leg of the spring. So this is a good position right next to the safety and the back side of the trigger. Insert another zip tie. Now let's move the leg of this spring, this hammer spring, into position. Now you may have difficulty if your hammer isn't completely seated. So if you start noticing that it's difficult to keep the hammer in position, you may need to continue moving the trigger so that you can get it all in line right here. See how it's all in line here and it's stable. And then manipulate your zip tie just to hold it all in place, like so. Once that's completed, now we'll put the rest of it back together. Take your other half of the buttstock, carefully line up all these little pins back here, but only just get them started halfway, or a quarter of the way if that. The most complex part is right here, the trigger assembly. We have to get that hammer hinge pin and then the actual trigger pin to line up on both sides. So use your punch to pry it into place. Once you've got everything lined up, these pins don't need to be in all the way. Take your upper and reinsert having these two pieces joined again to help keep everything together in the lower. You want to take your block of wood and push on that bolt as you're trying to line it up and that bolt in position so you can tighten it down. Once it's good and tight, it'll start spinning. Get your second Phillips head screwdriver, really tighten it down. Now it should go back together fairly easy here. There it is. That's really the best way to help yourself, by reinserting the lower into the upper, because it seats nicely and easily just like that. Then take your snips, go ahead and cut your zip ties. They just slide right out. Now we'll start putting some screws back in. Starting with the holes near the trigger assembly. Also make sure the rest of your buttstock goes together smoothly. You want to make sure you apply equal pressure all the way around and evenly. Flip it over and insert the bolts on the other side. Starting with the holes closest to the front of the trigger assembly. Once you've got all screws in both sides, take your recoil pad and insert that in the back of the buttstock. Take your flathead, that'll assist getting it all back in there. Pull your hammer back. Now let's reinsert the takedown pin. That completes the installation of the SU-22 Trigger Spring Kit. Now that we've installed the M-Carbo trigger spring, let's try the trigger pull. £5 10 ounces. Let's do another reading. £5 11.5 ounces.